Well, if you're in the tourism and hospitality business, you have to be resilient, because since 2001, we've either been in decline or recovery 50% of the time.
Halifax and Nova Scotia, I think, are on the cusp of something big. We have been discovered, but there's still so much more opportunity for us.
Welcome to Place, the Tourism Industry Association of Nova Scotia's podcast. Our industry is worth $3.2 billion annually and employs over 50,000 Nova Scotians. So this podcast is designed to talk about tourism and the issues and topics that matter. Each episode, we will explore conversations that demonstrate the interconnectivity between tourism and the social, cultural, environmental health of the province. There is no place like Nova Scotia, and we want to ensure every Nova Scotia community benefits from the positive impacts that only tourism can bring.
For people to come from away to appreciate and enjoy what we have that perhaps in many districts have long ago been lost. But we can't take it for granted, and we can't presume that everything's going to just be static.
Being able to have a touchstone, whether it's something as simple as talking about history and you say, this building is where it happened. The reason people like to visit museums and historic sites is because they want to be there.
Our natural assets are a significant travel motivator, and people are seeking out places with strong environmental standards. The health of the tourism industry is directly linked to a vibrant and healthy environment. Land and coastal protection, forest and marine management, and clean energy are all components of a broad social approach for tourism. As visitors seek out authentic and safe destinations, those with a demonstrated commitment to a sustainable environment will be well positioned to compete in the global marketplace.
So first of all, I would say that nature, broadly speaking, is the underpinning. It is the kind of foundational asset for the tourism industry in Nova Scotia. Obviously, protecting those natural assets is critical for the future of the industry. My name is Raymond Plourde. Well, first of all, my title is Senior Wilderness Coordinator with the Ecology Action Centre, which is Nova Scotia's oldest and largest environmental advocacy organization, to be able to attract people to come from places that perhaps have lost their natural beauty and attributes. I think increasingly the world is looking for the kind of natural landscapes and seascapes that Nova Scotia has. And in terms of working with the industry, we have had a long, I would say 20-year association with TIANS, the Tourism Industry Association of Nova Scotia, who are also advocates for their industry. And in terms of alignment, there's plenty of alignment. The underpinning of the tourism product in Nova Scotia is to a large degree based on a healthy, natural landscape and our spectacular seascapes. Unless you pay attention to land use issues and other industry proposals and so on, then some of those could be lost without much public awareness. And so the Tourism Industry Association in particular advocates for those healthy natural landscapes, and we've worked together very well on those types of issues for the last 20 years, as well as increasingly things like greening your business and energy efficiency and other things that help the environment while maintaining and celebrating the beautiful natural heritage that we have that I think is increasingly in demand from the rest of the world.
So what exactly is at risk?
Balance is not guaranteed. The economic pressures of development are crushing inward on these green spaces in the urban environment, and then in the rural environment, it's large industrial projects like gigantic wind farms for green ammonia and hydrogen, which just came out of the blue at us maybe a year and a half ago. They also threaten to industrialize the natural rural landscape. So we need to constantly be on guard for our natural areas. We can't just presume that they're going to stay static and always perfect.
Raymond can see that right now we have a once-in-a-generation opportunity to build a lasting legacy.
The potential for Blue Mountain Birch Cove Lakes to become a urban national park is now before us. That's a hell of a drawing card for people who might want to come and live here and for people to visit here. It's like a mini Keji right on our doorsteps, and we have a couple of others in Sandy Lake and in the Purcell's Cove Backlands. And if we are smart as a city and as a province, we will preserve those green assets in the same way that we look out for built assets, right? Like, so a city is more than just buildings. If we pave everything over and we become New Jersey, I don't think that's really going to attract people to come and live, and it's certainly not going to be that attractive to visitors. So we need to preserve these green assets and think of them as assets worthy of investment, worthy of human-powered work to plan for and to manage these lands in perpetuity. Because I think, if you think 50 years to 100 years out, these places will be our central parks. And I don't think anybody in New York City would argue that it was a bad idea to protect all that land way back when. What we really need is to see more government investment in purchasing the pieces of private land around these areas to make them contiguous, large areas that fully protect the ecosystem. We don't want to just have like a piece of green in and amongst a massive amount of urban sprawl or industrial development. Well, where you replace natural areas with concrete and steel and asphalt, then the wildlife that use the area's habitat get pushed out, and that is always quite a sad thing. And I think, for a lot of visitors from away, to see a wild creature of any kind is quite often a rare thing for them and a real special thing. So for people and for wildlife, we need to preserve these areas, and for our quality of life and our draw as a destination.
When we talk about our environment, we also mean our buildings. And our heritage buildings play a key role in tourism.
So the people who are serving you, they wake up in the morning in a heritage building. And that's what I love about my job, is that I come from the museum world. I know visitors. I've dealt with visitors at every place from small rural community museums to, I worked at Ellis Island, the Statue of Liberty. So I've met every type of visitor there is. But what I love about my job now is that it's protecting not only the things they interact with directly, like when they visit Highland Village, it's protecting the things they interact with passively, the buildings they see as they're driving down the street. And that's really important because that's why people come here. That's why this place is such a great place to live. So my name is Emma Lang, and I'm the Executive Director of the Heritage Trust of Nova Scotia. And my job, I'm our only staffer, so my job is quite the wide range. Our mission is to educate and advocate around built heritage. So that's any building 50 years or older. Our job is to help make sure it continues to tell its stories for the future. And then we do grants, we do workshops, we have a newsletter that keeps folks up to date on the work we're doing and particular points where we want folks to help us advocate to government. And we also have a research library that will soon be open to the public. And we also have an active training program where we take on young heritage professionals, whether they're planners or architects or folks who want to work in other associate industries, to help them see the type of work we do.
Emma sees the province from the perspective of a newcomer.
So I'm an immigrant, and my partner's from Ontario. And so we're both come from a ways, and I am very proud to say I am a come from a way. To me, that's a positive term. I think people often think that newcomers to Nova Scotia, particularly immigrants, don't value our heritage or our built heritage. And I live in the most diverse riding in all of Atlantic Canada. And I know from talking to my neighbors, and especially other immigrant moms at the playground, that our heritage is something that makes this place familiar because people when you leave your home, whether you're like me and I moved from Boston, so the history is really interconnected, so it's not particularly different, or anywhere, or you come from somewhere really, really different. You come from Syria, you come from Afghanistan, you leaving behind a place with history. So to be in a place that also has history and where that history is really valued and where you see it every day. It may not be the older buildings you grew up with. It may not be mosques with minarets and on every other block, but it still creates that feeling of home and that feeling of richness and that feeling of familiarity.
But despite this richness, we are at risk of losing our heritage buildings.
So, all of these cool things come together. I think Built Heritage has a lot of solutions to offer for problems that everyone goes on about, whether it's housing or environmental issues. And also, I live in a heritage house. My heritage house is from 1937, which means most people don't consider it a heritage house, though strangely, it's the same amount older than my son as the house I grew up in that was built in the 1890s was, which when I was growing up, everyone would have said was a heritage house. And I love that it has quirks about that tell us things. I have 2 jam cupboards. In Halifax, we have a yard, but we don't have like an orchard. But the idea that someone would think you needed 2 jam cupboards in 1937 says so much about that 1937. We need to improve our heritage laws. We have some of the weakest, in fact, we have the weakest heritage protections in the country. Nova Scotia is the only place where without any consultation, just a demolition permit, if a building is municipally registered, after 3 years, it can be torn down, which is insane. It means that basically a municipal registration has no teeth. In addition, if something is registered at the provincial level and if you have to go through a process to get it demolished, if you ignore that process, our fines are insanely low. We saw that with the Reed House, where the building, which dated from the 1760s and was registered on 2 different lists, was torn down, and the fines for the demolition were less than, I think they were $86,000, which for a house that was 200 plus and 50 years old is just insane. We are not doing enough to protect these structures. If we don't protect them, they will go away. And there's sort of no 2 ways about it. We also haven't had a provincially registered building in 4 years. We've had 9 federally registered, which is a much more involved process. But the province is currently refusing to call the committee to register buildings as provincially significant. There seems to be a lack of will amongst government to protect this thing, which makes our tourism industry what it is and makes living here what it is.
Our built heritage and our environment are key assets in the appeal of Nova Scotia. To maximise them, we must also protect them. So to give us some perspective, Robert Bernard gives us the final word.
Because of the influence, the colonial influences, and business and money and power and all of these things, it changed the whole way of life for us. Even things like eating in a certain way, or living, in a certain location, or hunting or survival was so different. So that's why it was very, very difficult for us to go through that. And today's world now, resilience means we have to protect what we have left so that it can continue to be strong for our children, because we speak about the next 7 generations, not just your child or your grandchild, but their grandchildren and, so on. So I think that'll only happen when people are willing to listen and willing to understand. If they're continue to be stuck in the way that we do things in the modern world and we continue to take, then eventually that'll run out.
Thank you for listening to Place, the Tourism Industry Association of Nova Scotia's podcast. If you'd like to learn more about the work we do to support, promote, and celebrate our tourism industry, please visit tyends.org.